Imagine lying on an operating table. The monitors go flat. Brain activity ceases. You have crossed the threshold into clinical death. But then, by some absolute miracle of modern resuscitation, your heart spikes back. You open your eyes. You don't ask your family where you are or tell a disjointed story about a bright light. You immediately demand a pen. That is exactly what happened to a man named Ysef Shakur. Following a profound near-death experience, he sat down and sketched this, a detailed, structurally complex map of the universe, bypassing the clumsy tools of human language to record exactly where he went. When you look at the fully translated, detailed version of his sketch, the architecture is staggering. He charted distinct levels of existence, from an intermediate state to a swirling vortex labeled in transit, leading all the way up to the journey from source. This intensely specific structural vocabulary has been historically documented for millennia. Roughly 2,400 years ago, the philosopher Plato recounted the myth of the story of a soldier who woke up on his own funeral pyre to describe this same deeply layered journey of the soul. This leaves us with a choice. Is this map the random misfiring of an oxygen-starved brain, or are we looking at a clinically verifiable blueprint of reality? To answer that, we have to look at the numbers. Because modern resuscitation technology is so effective, we are bringing far more people back from the absolute brink of permanent death than at any other time in history. Millions of people now walk among us with the memory of leaving their bodies. In 2001, cardiologist Dr. Pim Danlamal subjected this to a prospective study, tracking flatlining patients in real time. His results, published in the medical journal The Lancet, showed that 18% of clinical deaths resulted in this highly structured, distinctly memorable journey. Medical consensus now formally refers to this as a recalled experience of death, or RED. What separates a true RED from a drug trip or ICU delirium is the absolute lack of absurdity. Patients don't see melting walls or dreamlike chaos. Even with zero electrical activity in their brains, they report hyperlucidity, a crystal-clear mental focus where their core identity persists entirely intact. Because these experiences follow a predictable, logical sequence, they give us a reliable dataset. We can take this reported sequence and systematically test it against the rules of materialist science. At the bottom of Shakur's map are delicate lines called strands, tethers linking physical bodies directly to higher realms. A materialist would argue the visual tunnel is cerebrohypoxia, the visual cortex shutting down, and that piece, a desperate flood of endorphins triggered by catastrophic trauma. That biological explanation falls apart when confronted with veridical perception. There are documented cases where clinically dead patients accurately observe unpredictable details, like the serial numbers on surgical machines, that medical staff later verify. It gets even more difficult for the hypoxia model to explain patients who have been totally blind since birth. People whose optic nerves have never functioned report perfectly accurate visual details during their flatline. They correctly describe the colors of scrubs and the layout of the room. You cannot hallucinate a visual reality your brain has never possessed the architecture to process. This forces researchers toward the receiver model of consciousness. Think of the brain as an antenna rather than a generator. Shattering a physical radio doesn't destroy the music. The broadcast remains perfectly intact in the air around you. Under this framework, biological death simply removes a restrictive filter. The consciousness is no longer localized within the skull, allowing it to perceive the unfiltered panoramic spectrum of the universe. As that filter drops, the consciousness moves into what Shakur labeled the intermediate state. Here, the boundary between life and death appears to visually adapt to the patient's own earthly cultural software. A Westerner might describe arriving at a wooden fence in a meadow, but in indigenous Congo traditions, they frequently describe arriving at the banks of a mighty river. While the graphic interface changes, the underlying mainframe stays consistent. At the apex of the map is the Oversoul. Patients describe stepping into an environment composed of pure love, where communication happens instantly. Within this light, they undergo the life review. This is a panoramic, instantaneous reliving of every single second of their earthly existence. This is effective awareness. When you relive a moment where you were cruel, you lose your own defensive point of view. You are shifted into the other person's consciousness, forced to feel the sting of humiliation and pain your words caused, exactly as they experienced it. This process implies a record that exists outside of your own skull. It aligns with the theoretical model of the vacuum acting as a massive holographic hard drive, the Akashic field, where the emotional ripple effect of every interaction is permanently encoded. If the universe stores every fractional second of your life and every emotional ripple you cause, what is the actual purpose of this system? Psychiatrist Dr. Stanislav Grof explored this through holotropic states, methods of moving the psyche toward wholeness without a medical crisis. His research led to a framework he calls the cosmic game. Grof's work matches the ancient concept of Tat Twam Asi, or thou art that. It is the revelation that your individual soul is not separate from the infinite principle that birthed the universe. They are fundamentally identical. The drop of water is the ocean. Imagine an infinite mind in a state of static perfection. To escape eternal boredom, this consciousness intentionally shattered itself into billions of fragile fragments. It gave every piece localized amnesia, allowing it to experience the thrill of discovery and the drama of growth. We are the universe, playing an infinite game of hide-and-seek with itself. Returning from this architecture causes a permanent psychological shift. The deep existential anxiety of biological annihilation vanishes. Survivors simply lose their fear of death. The life review leaves them with the conviction that the separation between people is an illusion. They have felt the consequences of their actions through another person's nervous system, leading to a massive increase in altruism. In this view, empathy acts as a structural mechanism of reality, as real and as measurable as gravity or thermodynamics. This blueprint demands a state of radical accountability right now, in the middle of a perfectly normal Tuesday. Every conversation you have tonight, and every quiet kindness you offer tomorrow, is an act of cosmic significance. You are writing the software of the universe in real time. Everything is connected.